What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Micki Fine, is back with us today to talk about softening into your innate loving nature, healing from the core. Micki is an author and the founder of Mindful Living and has been a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher for over 25 years. She has taught mindfulness and loving kindness meditations since 1994 in a variety of settings, including her private practice, research environments, Rice University, the MD Anderson, and the Jung Center. Welcome back to AVAIYA, Micki.
Hi there. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. And all right, let's dive into this, right? We're talking about our loving nature today. So what are the effects of not being in touch with our loving nature?
Well, I know them all because I've been working on it for many, many years. One of the main things is that we never feel good enough, and that throws out all sorts of has all sorts of implications and all sorts of results from that, and that it really does permeate our lives. We rarely are kind to ourselves. I mean, if you don't like yourself, it's like, who am I? I don't care. I'm going to look out here. I'm going to look to other people. And we don't trust our own intuition, our own ideas. So we look to other people a lot. And the last time I talked was on the need to please. And so this is really very similar. And it's I think when we don't love ourselves, when we don't know we are innately good, then it's hard to connect with other people because there's always something for us to hide. We're not quite, we can't quite be open, and it's hard then to feel intimate. We start avoiding conflict. We start avoiding letting people see the difficult characteristics that all of it. I mean, we're all difficult at times, right? None of us are perfect. And I think also sometimes people end up staying to themselves, like they don't create really deep friendships. I remember growing up, I had friends, but I had one friend, like one friend. And when she left, we were both heartbroken, right?
Yeah.
So I think people who don't really know how good they are tend to stay to themselves. And if you perceive yourself as not good enough, that you don't know what's really in here, that you never shoot for the stars. And there's some research. It's really old research, and I forget the names of the researchers. I don't have them written down. I think one of them is Lazarus. One of the things that they found in this research is that when stress comes, you're aware of a challenge, right? And then the question is, can I meet the challenge? And that is totally dependent on who you think you are. Mm. And so then there's, you might go ahead and meet the challenge, but it's scarier, it's full of anxiety, full of doubt, and sometimes even when you succeed, you think, oh, well, it was just a fluke. Because you don't know this inside, you don't know the true inside. And one of the other things that I think is really interesting is that when we don't know our inner goodness, we tend to leave ourselves out of our own thinking and our own experience, and we look to others. What do you think, and what can I do for you, and what do you need from me, and do you like me? Do you like me? Right? You can tell I've never experienced any of this.
Me too.
Yeah. So we leave ourselves out of our own attention, and particularly emotionally. And I think for me, during many years, I had such high anxiety, and it's kind of like, what is this all about? Even when there wasn't necessarily a lot to feel anxious about, I was anxious. And I think that is common, and there's something called kind of anticipatory anxiety, that you are, when when an emotion starts arising that you don't want to feel, that you think is bad, or you think you can't handle it, then anxiety comes. And so it's hard to get to the feelings. And when we're looking at healing our lives, we need to be able to feel what's there. And when you don't, it gets really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about right, what happens when we aren't in touch with our loving nature. And it's very important to get. And I love that you mentioned the feeling part, because yeah, it's hard to know what's going on with ourselves if we don't even actually feel what's happening. So why is it so important for us to soften into our loving nature?
I like this word softening, because sometimes, I know in my own therapy, and I'm a therapist, I'm not practicing anymore, but there's always this, I've got to make this happen. I've got to, after this talk, I've got to get in contact with my inner loving nature, right? And that really defeats the purpose. Excuse me.
Mm.
So if we can little by little soften, and one of the things I think of in terms of softening is to be able to offer ourselves kindness, mercy, and compassion for the very fact that we don't know our loving nature, or we aren't perfectly healed from codependence or those kinds of things. And that's the way in which we move to find our true nature, to make new behaviors and all sorts of things, is by loving ourselves there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that it can become such a fight that it gets counterproductive. So that sense of kind of softening. And I think when we are able to soften, to begin to know ourselves more deeply, in terms of emotion, in terms of what we really want, and also what we need to change, right? That we can become more authentic. And none of us like to put on a mask and, although I did that for years.
Mm-hmm.
That it gets to be really onerous and hard, and then you can feel even more left out of things, even if you're with people, because they don't really know you.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Got it. And did you more to say about that?
Well, I have some other things to say, but not necessarily about that.
Yeah. So, okay, let's tie this into, right, codependency, right? So how can, we've talked about what it's like for us, what the effects are of us not being in touch with our loving nature, and then why it is so important for us to be in touch with that loving nature. So how can accessing our loving nature be an antidote to codependence?
Okay. That I think that when we can open to love, then we don't have to look to the other person and be clingy and do whatever they want and make sure that you are on their good side all the time, which is a pretty difficult task anyway. And that in our allowance of ourselves being imperfect, that we can open to other people in a different way, that we begin to make some of our own decisions. We begin to have more of an equal relationship, rather than I'll do anything, please just take me. And the person who is there is kind of like, ooh, man, this is a big job, right? This is a big job to take care of you, to help you know that you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when we know we're okay, it's like we find people who will love us for who we are, and that there's a much more natural flow. And we can tell when things aren't right, when we need to step back and say, woo, I'm doing my old thing again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And offer ourselves a sense of kindness, and that when we know that we're good enough, not even good enough, when we know that we are when we know our innate loving nature, that we can rely on that and not get so tied up in the codependent nature of some relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I love your point about, right, how much I guess it's like very efforting to be in a relationship where one person just doesn't feel good enough and the other one is always trying to reassure them that they are. I personally understand that, being on the codependency end and struggling with the shame part for sure. So what are some ways that people can get in touch with their loving nature?